Relationships aren't always sunshine and rainbows. Just like in nature, you can't have rainbows without a little rain.
Journey with us
Shani Goodson.
and Dr. Sunjata as we share stories and insights about our thriving, unconventional love life and our unique take on relationships and consensual non-monogamy. What's good, y'all?
Hey, what's up?
We're back for another episode of SunShan and Rainbows.
Yay.
Happy to be with you all once again to talk about another hot topic in the world of polyamory and consensual non-monogamy. And what energy are you bringing into today's show? How you feeling?
I am feeling pretty good. How are you?
Uh, a little tired, little, but I'm gonna work it out as we go through. I don't think it's gonna impact, the energy that I'm bringing to the episode, but I'm a little tired. But other than that, I felt good. As I woke up and got into my morning routine, did my meditation, I felt good. I felt positive. I felt a lot of gratitude and, excited to be with the people once again.
Yay.
Yeah. How are y'all feeling? Let us know in the comments. What's your energy? How are you watching today's show? Let us know in the comments.
This is actually a topic that I think you might have a lot to say about.
I do. I do. So we're gonna talk about handling public family and public perceptions of polyamory. It's a really interesting topic to me because it's something that, is a part of kind of like the deconstruction process of coming into this world and deciding that, we want to live this way. A lot of people navigate this in so many different ways. And it could be a pain point for a lot of people. It could be one of those things that gives a lot of people pause, or one of the things that some people are still in the closet, some people are out loud and proud, so it's an interesting topic for me in that way. What about you?
Yeah, it's interesting to me. I think my family in general is a little bit more like is less religious in general and like less like my mom is not really, she doesn't make it hard to tell her anything like, out of the ordinary for me. She's
Mm,
pretty much used to whatever craziness I bring to her door. So, um, this is still interesting though. Still an interesting topic. I think I got some stuff to say about it.
yeah.
Um, like, cause I'm pretty. I'm on social media. I would say I feel like I'm not on social media as much as people think I am because I don't even post every day. It's kind of interesting how people think that I'm on social media a lot, but I'm I'm not as much as you probably think. I do post kind of. I would say sometimes the things I post are really what's the word?
Racy?
Racy. Okay, sure. I'll
Or
take that. It's there. It could be perceived in many ways. Like they can be perceived. I think a lot of it's funny. You know, some of it is like commentary. Some of it's like the patriarchy type energy. And like the systems as they exist. Like a lot of my posts is really that. But a lot of people have two pages. I don't. I have one. My mom is on there. I have quite a lot of family on there, and some people have unfriended me. Like people who, I thought I was close to have unfriended me on social media, and I think it has to do more with my talking about polyamory than anything else.
yeah.
I've been blocked also by people, especially if I'm having a conversation about non-monogamy.
Mm,
They'll get on their high horse. So I look at my memories on Facebook a lot. So I see this, like I'll see, these comments where somebody gave me a whole lecture about why polyamory is like terrible.
mm.
And then they're blocked, and then and I can't respond or anything because they blocked me.
I think a lot of your posts too have to do with like sexual liberation. And you're not you're not shy about posting about your like sexual liberation and your dating liberation as a woman, and I think that rubs a lot of people the wrong way. And I think they feel like you're coming across like, you know you're not being as like, a woman should carry herself because of the ways that you're like, you know you'll say something like, it's summer is hoe season. I'm out here or outside or something like that. And I know because I know you that like you say, a lot of it is on that like fuck the patriarchy, sexism type energy, and women can be loud and proud about these things. And I think even if it's your truth or not, I don't think everything you post is necessarily your truth or to the degree that other people may think it is. Um, but I could see how it may rub a lot of people who are have yeah, rub a lot of people the wrong way, I guess.
It's so funny that you say that. I feel like it kind of just speaks to how different things are for men versus women
Hmm.
in a lot of ways. It's funny because I do think that some of the things I do, some people would consider oh shit. I do think that.
Hmm.
I just think that Sunjata's like, you're not really out here like doing with all the you're not really out here like hoeing. But I feel like if we told some of our escapades to some of the people who have blocked me, or even just like our escapades, not even just mine on my own, like if we just talk about that, look, don't
Me?
trying to act all innocent,
Me doing whole shit?
like I feel like people would be like, oh, okay, because they can't even like imagine, like they can't even fathom what happens. And it's honestly, to me, pretty regular, pretty normal. And I just think it's not the case for a lot of people. So I think that's part of what I'm trying to uh
Normalize, you think?
kind of,
Yeah, I think you try to normalize the idea that these things are happening and they can happen, and it's like you can be a whole complex human being because you obviously post about being a mom. You post about like work things and fears, concerns around just life challenges, being a divorced mom, your workouts, like. So I think you also like to post that stuff just to for those reasons, to show like the whole version of like what's you and what's possible. One of the things I like to say is I just say, to me, I think people get an idea that you're more prolific than you actually are. I agree. Like obviously we're unconventional in the sense that we are free people and we do engage, relate with other people other than each other. We do date, etc. I just get the perception that, and this is just me speaking for myself, you're not as prolific with it as your posts may give off,
as somebody might perceive that.
as
I
someone
can
that
see
as
that.
some especially some men may perceive, because I also get that based on the way men approach you, and then they're kind of like shocked when you're like, I'm not for everybody, like things like that is it's just interesting, how people perceive these things. And
It's
I'll
very
say,
cute.
yeah, yeah. And so, for me, like one of the things you pointed out is that, in terms of handling public perception and family perception, what a lot of people do is they have two pages. A lot of polyamorous people, non-monogamous people that, we know where we're in community with in the, online spaces, they have their poly non-monogamy identity page, a totally separate page that they only have their friends and
They're probably friends
contacts,
on,
in that on that page, and then they have their personal page.
which
Oh,
is
and
their
there's an
family.
alias, and there's an alias name,
Yeah.
and then there's their page with their family and friends, maybe some coworkers and etc. Classmates, etc. With their legal name. That's a totally separate Facebook page.
Sometimes it's an alias. Sometimes it's not. But yeah, a lot of times it's an alias. Now I'm
Mhm.
thinking about it. I'm like, that's
There's a
right.
lot of
Very true.
aliases out there, and like Shani, I don't have an alias page, so I'm Sunjata on Facebook. I've always been that way. So when I'm talking about, whether I'm talking about anything in like sports or family stuff, or if I'm talking about my non-monogamous polyamorous life, or I'm posting about our podcast, etc., um, it's going on that page. And for me, it's interesting because I've gotten like specifically my dad, for example, he'll come to me and be like, man, you don't got to put all your personal stuff out there. You don't got to talk about that, on social media. I know that it makes him uncomfortable. Um, just, and it's not like I don't talk about quote unquote racy, stuff. Um, but to him it is, for him, just me mentioning that I'm polyamorous is like putting my personal life and my business and my sex life out there, and it makes him uncomfortable. And he's literally approached me about it several times. And each time I just have to tell him, the reasons why I do it, and I'm comfortable, and I'm comfortable with who I am. I have nothing to hide. I can understand why it makes him uncomfortable, but I live my life loud and proud. Um, so yeah, that's one of the things that I've had to navigate. And I will say that there have been times where especially early on when I first came out, I had family members say things that I didn't like. They brought their misperceptions about polyamory into my comments, and I would have to get on there and dispel. But ultimately what it ended up being is an opportunity for me to inform, and that's one of the reasons why I live out loud, because I know that, again, I'm normalizing consensual non-monogamy and polyamory for the people in my sphere. And I think that's a good thing. I think that's I think that's a good thing, and I'm able to be a representation of it, and dispel some misperceptions, and inform people on what it's like.
And I'm like, meanwhile, my mom just is like, she'll just scroll by whatever she doesn't like or doesn't understand. She doesn't really even ask me about it. Honestly, she'll comment on some of it, and I'll be like, my mom commenting on my nonsense, like, oh my gosh. And I think she just always has accepted that I've always been a little like strange and wanted to do things that were maybe a little different, and she kind of always rolled with it. So she's never really asked me any questions or said, and I feel like she gives the energy that she likes in Drata, which is hilarious because she didn't really give the energy that she liked my ex too much. So like, and I was with him for a long time. So it's just funny, like, and that was monogamous, and this isn't. And so she's just pretty accepting. That's the short of it. And I appreciate that, I appreciate that about her. I always say to tell people, my mama is on here on Facebook. I mean, my mama on my Facebook. So no, I don't care. I'll
And
post anything.
yeah, and on the flip side, I'll say that I get it. For people who do want to hide their identity when it comes to, their polyamorous or non-monogamous truth, I get it. Some people are concerned for work reasons. They don't want to be judged at work.
Oh, my Facebook is my only one, but it is an alias for that reason. Like, I don't want students finding me. I don't want my coworkers
I mean, it's
finding me.
private for that reason.
No, it's an alias name. Like
Oh, it is an
my
alias
name
name. That's
is
right.
not my real name
Right, right, right.
on my social media
Yeah.
because of that.
hmm So yeah, a lot of people will do that. Where they, again, for those reasons. And I get it. They don't want to deal with talking to their family. Some people are just more private than I am, or than we are in those ways. But you're private to a degree because you do have an alias name on your page. Even though you invite some family, a lot of family and friends, it's some people you don't want finding it. That's why you have an alias name
Yep.
as your primary Facebook page. So, there's varying degrees of privacy and considerations. And I get it. I don't judge folks. Um, and I think, folks come out when they're ready. So that's one of the ways that people handle, and that's some of the ways that people handle and navigate this via social media. So let's get into like events, like how people navigate family and public perceptions with bringing different partners to events.
I mean, I haven't really run into this issue too much. I just go where I want to go with who I want to go with, and that's just how it's gone. I haven't really I don't know, this has never presented any issues to me, especially because Sunjata is like very chill. He's not. I always tell people, you look in at us and you think we're one way, but if I wanted to take someone else somewhere, he would not be like, "Oh, how could you do that to me?" That would not be his energy. And same for him. He's taken people other loves places, and I haven't been there. Um I'm trying to think about like, and if we go to like polyamorous events, we'll typically drive together, but then like go mingle anyway. So I don't know. Like
But
this
this
is
is
never.
I'm
But
talking
you're
this
talking
is
about
more like outside of polyamorous community
right,
events.
and even I'm thinking about that like separately. But I don't know. I've never had an issue with like who. What talk about
Well,
like?
I'll say for me, like there haven't been too many like family events or like business public events. There's probably been more like business type events, or like, community organizing type events that I've gone to where I've taken different loves during my journey. And that's because I move in like anti-oppression liberation type spaces. I've never felt any discomfort about bringing different loves to different events because those people tend to be more open-minded anyway. And a lot of them live these type of unconventional lives in different contexts, even if it's not polyamory. But they move through the world in unconventional ways. So it's not like a big shock when I show up and I say I'm polyamorous and this is my love so and so, and then the next time at another event and this is my love so and so. Like that has never been an issue, and that's something I've navigated. But in terms of family events, like family weddings and things like that, there haven't been too many instances, or like high school, college friends. More recently, there's been two events, like two weddings that I've gone to, and I've only brought, like, you've gone to both of those with me. Um, I will say that I have experienced, well, let me say this. That is something that I haven't traversed yet. We'll see what happens when I do. Meaning, if I take someone other than Shani to meet my family members. Like I haven't
Mm-hmm.
done that yet. Um, at this stage, most of my family know I'm pretty open. I think I would be pretty comfortable. They may be a little uncomfortable. I think when I took you to a family event recently, you expressed you noticed some things and maybe some little side eyes, or some things like some of the women were looking at you some type of way. Maybe you felt some judgment. You want to speak a little bit about that?
I wouldn't say judgment, but definitely like if you've ever been in a space like this, there's warmth that you get from some people, and then there's like a coolness, that you get from other people. And I could tell.
Yeah.
I could feel some coolness from some folks. And then there were some people who I felt more warmth from. And I would say I felt that more strongly when I went to the wedding with your friends, your college friends' wives. I felt there was more coolness coming from them. Not
Hmm.
all, not all. I could think of one in particular for sure who felt a lot more warm, but yeah, there were two in particular that I'm thinking of that I was like, ooh, yeah, there was iciness. You could tell that they were like, mm.
Yeah. You know what? And I'm gonna, make an assumption here, um, about that. I think that what happens is when Shani and I go around people who are in monogamous marriages, there's like a little bit of I don't want, it's like if I'm this is an assumption, but it feels like for some of the people, especially some of the wives, they feel like accepting us and our dynamic may give their husband some ideas, or something like that, or it feels threatening to them.
It
Accepting
definitely feels
us
threatening to
feels
them.
threatening to them for some reason, or there's something they probably they may not even be able to put words to it, but it's like a bodily thing. Like she said, it's like a more of a coldness reaction to our presence than a warmth, because our presence and what it represents brings up some discomforts in people. And I think that's what Shani's speaking to. And I could say, it's cool, I understand. I think they did the best they could. I don't think it was like anything intentional. I think folks are just working through their level of comfort. Some of them may have some judgments, and it is what it is. That's okay, but it is something we have to navigate when we go into those more conventional dynamics, especially to a monogamous marriage with a bunch of monogamously married people. It is something that we do have to navigate with those perceptions.
Um, I will. A kind of interesting story I think about bringing somebody else to a family thing. I had a graduation that I had to attend, and I knew that my ex was going to be there, and so I did not bring Sunjata. I actually brought a woman with me, and it's one of the. It felt like a benefit of the
A woman love, a woman
yeah,
friend, yeah.
yeah. And it just felt like a benefit to have, somebody else that would kind of be perceived differently in that situation. Even though the perception was probably incorrect. it's still, you know, because I assume he assumed that, this was my platonic, buddy, and like i- it's not really true. So I think that like that was an interesting situation that I wasn't really expecting.
Hmm.
So kind of an advantage maybe to having different types of partners and different types of people and different types of loves
Yeah.
is that, you can kind of control the perception a little bit more
Hmm.
if you like.
Yeah, yeah, and yeah, because no one, when you go in public to women, the assumption is generally that they're just, friends, like platonic friends only. Um, I will say that, I was in a relationship with, or I was partnered to someone years ago that worked for a really large company, and they would have events, and she was very open within her company and her colleagues and coworkers that she was, ethically non-monogamous. And she brought me to events at times. She took her nesting life partner to events at times, and I was like, really, I thought that was really cool. Um, that she was so open. And so it's just another example that some people navigate these things in different ways, and she was not. She didn't hide it at all, and she took different, loves to different events, etc.
And I think that is so admirable when somebody's able to do that, because sometimes it can feel so like you're being like people are looking at you
Hmm.
and judging you.
Hmm.
So and talking about you. So I admire and appreciate the bravery there.
Yeah, yeah.
So what about some things that, weren't so brave? Maybe a little bit more like, oh my gosh, that was so awkward, so cringy.
Yeah.
You've had a few.
Yeah, I had some experiences that were kind of awkward. Like I remember one time when some of my college buddies and I were talking about a group trip, and they were talking about a group trip. We've done several group trips with just the fellas, and but they were talking about a group trip with the wives, right? And one of my friends was very explicit, like, but calling speaking to me that he's like, but you can't bring anybody, because he said specifically that his wife would have an issue with it, and I he said
Probably
it.
one of the icy wives.
Yeah, definitely. He said it in like a joking way, but I didn't like it. I thought it was kind of it was whack. I'll say that. It was whack. And it was whack and weird. And for me it's like I just wouldn't go on that trip. But I do feel some type of way that, there that I got like kind of, iced out of that particular trip because I have a unconventional, love style. And they would have an issue if I went on one trip with one love and then maybe potentially another trip with another love. Again, that would bring up something in their wives, or in this particular person, his wife, that he didn't want to navigate. So yeah, that was awkward, and it didn't go anywhere. Like I didn't press, but it did make me feel some type of way. Um, and so yeah, I'll just say that. What about you? Any interesting stories like that? Any awkward experiences?
Nah, my friends are all chill. And my long-term friends are not even married. So it's like, um, I don't have these issues. They be like, yeah, girl, do you, you know,
Mhm.
enjoy. I don't have these kind of issues. And at this point, I pretty much only am friends with people who are non-monogamous or um, are who have done actually some research on it, because the people who are close to me are like, I'm interested. Like now I'm interested. You got me thinking about it differently than I used to think about it. And
Mhm.
they've done some research. And actually, one of my very best friends is in some of the groups now, even though she's more ambiamorous. She's more, I would say I'm somewhat ambiamorous, but I would say she's more ambiamorous than I am. And she's in some of the groups now too. And another really good friend of mine is like, you opened my mind. I never thought about it like this before. Maybe it's not for me, but I totally think it's valid. Like, so not for the most part, they've been kind of chill. I think they um they know what my marriage was like, and what my separation was like. And I think they're, for the most part, happy that I found something that feels good. They like you know, they think you're uh, a good guy, which is cool. And I
Thank
agree.
you, friends.
And I agree. So I don't really have these like issues in my life with the people who I'm close to. And I'm gonna be real. I'm gonna be honest. It's probably because I don't really tolerate people who can't tolerate and accept me. I can't really have like close relationships with people like that, and I'm not unwilling to let go of an old friendship that doesn't make me feel good anymore.
Yeah. Well, another situation I can share because I have a couple more, awkward, situations I've had to navigate. Like another one is when I've gone on some of those fellas trips. I tend to be the focus of conversation and jokes. For whatever reason, I because I'm polyamorous and it's just an easy topic to like one be curious about. So, someone may ask like first of all, my friends are a bunch of, jokesters, like a bunch of comedians. So we're always joking and laughing, and a lot of things that a lot of guys like to do is ball busting, right?
Hmm.
And so they like to bust in my balls about being polyamorous and give all these jokes, and for the most part, I'm good. I just laugh along with them. Um, and if anything goes too far, I'll speak up and I'll say it. And at other times, I'll just again I'll shut it down or speak up and say it and try to change the subject or whatever. But there are times where it does become annoying, and but at the same time I tend to not let myself get annoyed by it because I understand it's like all in good fun, and they bust each other's balls about a bunch of different things as well. That's just my thing that they get to rag on me about. um so, but I will say on the trips, like just in our day-to-day chats, that everybody's getting on everybody. It's not really my thing. I don't really do that because that's just not how I engage with my friends. But for the comedians in the group, that's what they do. They get on each other and all of us. Um, but when we're on those trips, there'll be times where my head start hurting because I just get so like beyond my capacity with answering questions or responding to the various inquiries or jokes, and it's like, all right, let's just change the conversation. It can become really heavy at times. Um and another thing I want to say too, just about going back to navigating the perceptions of going in front of like family and the wives. One of the things I will say for me is that I think that I am one of the reasons I am out loud and proud, and I don't mind, everyone knowing, is because I know who I am. I know who I am, and I'm pretty comfortable in my own skin. Um and I don't mind if people misjudge, and I'm here for their questions if they have them, if they're brave enough to ask or they want to be curious. And if they have judgments that fall in line with, like, say, moral judgments or negative judgments, the way that I view the world, I see that as more so them judging themselves. And they're judging themselves and how they would think about themselves if they live the way I live. But I don't think that their self judgments and how they perceive the way I live, they don't matter to me because they're not me. They don't know me. They're not in my skin. They're not in my body. So I don't have any fears, or of other people's judgments. I feel like that's really a reflection of themselves and how they judge themselves and how they want to hold themselves accountable to how they live their lives. But it really has nothing to do with me. And I understand that. And that's why I'm willing to go into these spaces and be who I am and not hide it. Um, I could share also that early on when I first came out and first, separated and divorced from my ex-wife, she wrote a book. And she wrote a book about our experience and her experiences, her experience of our separation and divorce, her experience of me coming out, as polyamory to her first. And if you've been following this podcast, you know that for 6 years after I came out, I went to counseling trying to save our marriage and trying to stay within that marriage and trying to suppress, who I was. And ultimately, it just, after 6 years of doing it, I couldn't do it anymore. And, I can understand, her feelings. I can understand her being hurt. I can understand her feeling betrayed. I think all that is valid. And, I remember when she wrote the book and she started promoting it on Facebook. Now we got, common friends, family, neighbors, like a lot of people in our lives, a lot of people in my life found out about it because she started promoting this book. Before, I'll say, yeah, they found out because of that. And um, it was interesting. It was an interesting time because I didn't like how she portrayed some of the things, that happened. Um, and it was awkward. I remember she had a book signing, and like my some of my family members went because we were a family. We were a family. They wanted to support her. That was awkward. So there's been a lot of awkward moments in that separation and divorce process. Early on, but here I am, 7, almost 8 years later, and it's all smoothed out. It's all smoothed out between she and I. It's moved out between me and her parents and her family. When I go around, they're loving and accepting. Her parents, when they were still alive, after the initial icy period of a couple years, they eventually came back to being loving and accepting of me because I would be around because of my children. And I move freely, around her and her family, and I'm grateful that she's come around to embracing me, and now she's able to come into my household with Shani and I, and then speak to Shani, and speak to my other love, and I bring the other love to one of my son's basketball games, and they're cordial and friendly to each other. So it's interesting because early on it was very awkward and very icy, but because I continue to be myself, continue to show up as myself, my most authentic self, and be the loving, generous, kind, representation of who I am, everyone just fell into just accepting me. And I'm grateful for that. So for those of you who are, listening to this and you're like, somewhere different on your journey, and you may be someone who's more private and afraid, I could share with you that, yeah, there is some tough tension points early on, but eventually people who love you, they're going to continue to love you, and they're going to figure it out and figure out ways to love and accept you. So just be you, and whenever you're ready to come out. But I could tell you through my experience that over time everything fell back to being natural and normal. Hope you're enjoying this episode. Let's take a quick break to tell you about something that we've been working on.
We're excited to announce our course and coaching program, Relationship Bliss, where we help polyamorous people transform their relationships into highly compatible, peaceful, deeply aligned, and blissful partnerships.
We do this by sharing techniques for effective communication, deeper connection, and conflict resolution. The program offers a self paced course with 5 learning modules, 25 training videos, and live virtual coaching sessions with us, Shani and Sunjata.
Learn more at go-growdialogue.com.
Thanks for listening. Now back to the show.
Yeah, I think that I agree with that. Whoever is close to you will accept you. I think that's true. I think it's a good time to move into our segment.
Let's do
We
it.
talk about relationship philosophy.
Relationship philosophies.
This one is really kind of, this is a point I try to get across kind of often because I think a lot of people miss, they mistake why they think people are polyamorous. And for me, polyamory is a big part of liberation. Just not just for myself, but broader liberation uh, throughout society. And that sounds like, what do you mean by that? It's the reason that polyamory is, it's more of like an extension. This is why sometimes I say I don't know how polyamorous, if I like that term to describe me, because really what I aim to do let love people in the way that they can still be their full selves, that's not controlling, that's not possessive, that is not demanding, and making guarantees. And that kind of evolved and became polyamory because that was where what my thought process logically led me to. So I hope that makes sense. Where liberation is the primary goal and polyamory is really a consequence of
Mm,
that, right? For other people it's the other way around, right? They come to polyamory and then they're like, oh, liberation. It's the other way around for me, right? Liberation brought me to polyamory, or the idea of liberation. And as my thoughts about personal and societal liberation expand, I start to see that monogamy, and compulsory monogamy in particular, has a lot of roots in colonization, has a lot of roots in keeping capitalism going,
Patriarchy.
and keeping patriarchy, upholding patriarchy,
Mm-hmm.
all of these things that don't feel aligned with me. And so that's how polyamory really became a part of my life. But again, that's why I don't really embrace the label so much, because it's not that I am polyamorous as much as it is that I want to be free. And polyamory is the only way that I can see how to do that in my romantic and platonic and familial relationships. It's really,
Mm-hmm.
non monogamy is broader than just my romantic life, if that makes sense.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. I don't think a lot of people that are hearing about polyamory in the mainstream media are looking at it as a tool for liberation,
No.
or as a tool to, like you said, to reject those systems rooted in power over and control, like patriarchy and etc. Um, all the misogyny and sexism, etc., that is rooted and upheld through compulsory monogamy. Polyamory stands against that in a lot of ways, and people practice it differently. But one of the things that one of the reasons why Shani and I are able to have the relationship that we have is because we both are liberation centered. um we're both rooted in liberation, we're both rooted in anti-oppression. So polyamory as liberation, as a philosophy for us, is just an offshoot of that. And for me, that's also one of the reasons why I like to live this out loud and proud, is because I see so many people getting hurt within the domain of compulsory monogamy. I see so many people trying to contort themselves to stay in that societal norm so that they can feel accepted, so they can feel normal in that way. And ultimately, so many people hurt themselves and others. I see so many people lying to themselves and then going out, lying to themselves that they can be in a monogamous marriage or relationship, and then going out and cheating. And when they go out and cheat, they then talk bad about themselves. They have this negative self-talk, and they feel like, oh, I'm such a failure, I can't do it, there's something wrong with me. And then they also hurt the person that they're in a relationship with, in a marriage with, because they keep saying to them, this is who I am, this is who I want to be for you. But ultimately they can't keep their word. So now people are arguing, fighting, getting divorces, etc., and it just becomes such a toxic landscape. And one of the reasons why I think it's important that, you know, ethical non-monogamy, consensual non-monogamy, polyamory, etc., is in the mainstream and is talked about openly, is so that young people know that there's options. They don't have to just default to that. And, I make sure that my children understand the differences and knowing that they have choices. Um,
And that
because
goes for anything. They don't have to default to anything.
right.
We are speaking specifically about polyamory and non-monogamy here in this podcast, but speaking of it as a broader tool, we mean that they have options to live a life that's not standardized, right?
Hmm.
They
Hmm.
don't have to be marginalized just to be themselves.
Right.
They don't need to be feel oppressed just to have a feeling of authenticity, because it's exhausting to not be who you are
Yeah.
and not be accepted. And so many people get bullied into being whatever they think they're supposed to be,
Hmm.
because what else do you do? That we're really trying to open up this idea of so many other paths
Yeah.
and inclusion and tolerance of all of those things.
Yeah.
So,
And
yeah.
pluralism instead of standardization, etc. The idea, we live in such a standardized society where, you look at pop culture, we look at movies, books, music, etc., church, the work for it. Like there's this assumptions, and there's so many about that everyone's going to follow this same path, get married in a heterosexual, monogamous, marriage, and that's the epitome of success. And it could feel especially for those of us who are coming into this later and we try that and then we fall off of that. For me, it was a lot to work through. It was a lot to deconstruct. And then once I deconstructed it, I had to work through all the feelings of being a failure and all these things, etc. So, you know,
If you're trying to like work through some of that unlearning, I actually have some ebooks that I've got that how long has it been? A month maybe? About a month ago.
hmm
And one of them is called Polyamory as a Tool of Liberation.
yeah.
So if you're interested in trying to unlearn some of these, I also have one called Deconstructing Mononormativity. And there's another one called Decentering Men. So if you're looking to like and unlearn and de-school a lot of this, because you yourself are feeling like you want to live more authentically, you want to be more free, you want to feel more like yourself, check it out. We'll definitely drop that link in the description, the show notes here, because I really think that's a good place to start. Unlearning a lot of these things it's so hard. You're so conditioned, especially
hmm
when it comes to what success looks like.
yeah.
And for myself, I can say that's part of the reason why I stayed in my marriage as long as I did, for sure. Part of the reason I got married in the first place was because I was trying to follow this trajectory, because what else do you do? And it does take a lot of bravery, courage to be what you are in the face of what other people how they might perceive you. But I hope that this episode helped you to maybe find a little bit of courage if you're struggling with that.
hmm
Because like Sunjata said earlier, the people who love you are going to love you. Like,
yeah.
you don't have to worry about that.
And there's also a lot of misperceptions that if you step into your truth in this way, you won't be able to have what we have. You won't be able to find a life partner. It's not true. Or if you're a single mom with children, no one's going to want you. It's not true. We are a living representation of that. Or if you're a man living this way, you won't be able to find, a woman that will want to accept you. It's just not true. Shani and I do life together. We're life partners, and we live together and we do all the conventional things that life partners do or married couples do. We just are free to express ourselves and love other people and etc. And we still accept each other and we still have this dynamic partnership. We're able to support each other and etc. So it's possible. Liberation and liberated love is possible, y'all.
I think that was beautiful. Good way to end this.
Yes, yes, y'all. Thanks for rocking with us again for another episode. And, we'll see y'all in the next one. Love y'all. Peace. That's a wrap for this episode of Sunshine and Rainbows. We hope today's conversation sparked some new insights, deep reflections, or just gave you a fresh perspective on love and connection.
We'd love to hear your thoughts. Drop us a comment, send us your questions, or share your own experiences. We might even feature them in a future episode.
And don't forget to subscribe to Sunshine and Rainbows on YouTube and your favorite podcast platform so you never miss an episode. And if you're vibing with us, please like, comment, share, and leave a review. It helps others find the show and keeps these conversations going.
Want more sunshine and rainbows? Follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok at Sunshine Rainbows for daily insights, behind the scenes moments, and updates on future episodes. You can get more in depth and intellectual with us on our Substack, sustainablesolutionsmedia.com. If you like what we're saying over there, consider becoming a paid subscriber to support all our liberation and anti-oppression efforts.
As always, thank you for rocking with us. We so appreciate the love and support. Until next time, we love y'all. Peace.